and all the money-grubbing multimillionaires with their with their diamond rings and Rolex watches and flying around $25 million jets. They don't have anything for anybody. That's why it's a sick and decaying system called the church. The church is a dying, decaying, smelly operation which is based on money, exploitation, stupidity, and ignorance. However, having said that, I know, because I have studied it for many years, that there is a incredibly fascinating encoded, I use that term, encoded or metaphor story in the New Testament. There's also some very interesting stuff in the Old Testament, as long as you know that the Old Testament was written by men, not God. But there is a lot of very interesting and intriguing material about the world and about mankind hidden, especially in the book of Genesis. So I'm not putting the Bible down at all. I'm just saying it's not written by God. It's written by men. But having said that, again, I would say that the New Testament is a very powerful encoded message. And you hear a lot today about Bible codes. Well, there's a code in the Bible. There's many Bible codes. Rabbis will tell you there's at least 7 codes in the Old Testament, not the King James Old Testament, but in the original Old Testament language. There's about 7 different codes, I have been told, and I've had it demonstrated to me, 3 or 4 of those codes. But in the New Testament, again, it is a very powerful story, and I have decided I've got so much material on that subject, and I've talked about it for so many years and never been able to put it out because I've always been under the gun, and I've never been able to sit down and actually put a video or a show together explaining what I'm seeing, explaining what I have seen in the New Testament. But I'm doing that now. I'm working on that, coming up with a new video, and it's going to be a multi-part series. It's not going to be just one video. It's going to require maybe 2 or 3 videos in the series to talk about the New Testament metaphors, all the symbolic stuff that's been hidden for years that people walk right past and didn't even see it. So that's something I'm working on, something I've been looking at for many, many years. And I came across many years ago the subject of Gnosticism. And I began listening to one of the world's foremost Gnostic teachers, Dr. Stephen Haller, in Glendale. And he used to have a church here in Los Angeles and Hollywood. He still does have the church, but now it's I think it's in Glendale or Eagle Rock in Los Angeles, Dr. Stephen Haller. And he's a Gnostic minister. And beginning to listen to him many years ago, I was fascinated with the wisdom and the knowledge of religion and the occult sciences and all of the ancient teachings of the world that the Gnostics were aware of that we today aren't. And so I know that Gnosticism is something very important to understand. The word Gnostic simply means in the Greek language to know. And that's in opposition to something which is referred to in Christianity as a believer. So in Christianity, if you go to a new church and they are aware that you are a Christian, they will ask you, oh, how long have you been a believer? And there's all kinds of books written for Christians using the term believer, the believer's house of faith and the believer's book and the this and that believer. And so Christians are referred to as believers. That should tell you something. That's a tip-off. Because when Christians are referred to as believers, it implies they don't know They believe. And I've said it so many times in the past that governments are not interested in believing something. Governments tap your phones, they tap your life, they tap you electronically. They spy on people. We have agencies called the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. They investigate to see what the real truth is. You have something called the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency. And so governments around the world are not interested in what you believe, what you think. They don't care about that. Governments want to know for sure what you're doing. So they have intelligence agencies and research societies and eavesdrop on people to see what they're really talking about. So the point being that there's a world of difference between being a Gnostic, which in Greek means to know, as opposed to a Christian who is a believer. When I first came across this idea that there's a hidden history to world religions, a hidden history that we're not aware of. And then the more I began to think about it, in order to be a clergyman in America, in order to be a minister in a church, you have to be degreed by Caesar. The government has to give you a degree. And you have to concede your will and your thoughts and your research to the government. And you have to get a government sponsored piece of paper that gives you a degree, and now you can talk about religion. And but what is the basis for your knowledge? Well, it's the knowledge you have gained by going to college and university and learning what to say and what not to say, and what the story is, and how to explain the story to the other people because they don't know. And so you learn what to kiss and when, and what to follow and what you're supposed to say, and then you take a test on it. And if you pass the test, then Caesar and his benevolence and his great graciousness, Caesar, who plays God, he will give you a degree. And now you are lawfully allowed to talk about your particular religion because you have done your degree work. And so it has nothing to do with God. It has nothing to do with spirituality or the human spiritual connection to the universe. None of that. It's a degree you get from college. You get a degree from the university, and that allows you to talk about theology and religion, as long as you stay within the confines of what what the books say. And so I realized a long time ago that this is nothing more than a racket. Religion is nothing more than a racket. It's just a corporation. It's just business, and but it's like show business actually. Religion is like show business. The guys who promote the business of religion, they don't have to go to work. They don't have to stamp a clock at 7 a.m. to go to work. They can sleep all day because you will bring them money on Sunday. You'll send your money to them, so they don't have to work. They're not interested in worrying about paying their bills. Hell, let you send them money. You'll send them money. And as a matter of fact, they pay their bills, but hell, they buy a $25 million jet because there's so many people who will support them. I learned something a long time ago, and I know it's a very deep concept, and so maybe a lot of people won't understand what I'm saying. It's a very deep concept, but I'm going to try and explain it as best I can. I learned this many years ago, and that is people will always support what they want. They will not support what they don't want. People will pay money to see a movie or to hear music or a concert that they want to go to. They will not pay money to go to a concert or a movie or entertainment that they don't want anything to do with. You will pay money to go to a restaurant to have the food you want. People will not pay money to go to a restaurant they don't like, and they don't like the food and they don't want to go there. So they will not support that restaurant or that movie star or that music or anything else. And, the same thing is true for clothing. Women will buy the dress they want, not the dress they don't like. And so people will financially and in every other way support what they want. They will not support what they don't want. I mean, I know it's a pretty deep concept, but that's the way the world works. And so if you're going to make money, the man who founded Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, he founded a religious order called Scientology. And L. Ron Hubbard, the founder, said, if you really want to be wealthy and live high, start a religion. Create a new religion. And my God, you will be awash in money. You don't have to get up in the morning. You don't have to do anything. Buy yourself a yacht and sleep all day and relax in the sun while everybody else is out working. And they will give you plenty of money. They will praise you. You will be signing autographs. You'll be like a rock star. And you will, you'll live the life of freedom from worrying about anything, have plenty of money, do your drinking and watch your ball games while everybody else is working to pay their bills and stay alive, and they're paying you money to teach them. And so that's the way it's been for thousands of years. Scandalous people who couldn't care less about spirituality or the life of their fellow man, the spiritual life of the human race or their fellow citizens. They just go out and tell the people what the people want to hear. The people want to hear certain things. Well, the clergy and the priests and the clergy and the reverends on television and the churches, they know what the people want to hear. They will pay money to hear it. So, if you want a job, there's a good job right there. Just tell the people what they want to hear, and they'll love you. As a matter of fact, if you tell people what they already believe to be true, if you can tell people in a church what they already believe to be true to start with, if you can show them and explain to them that what they already believe to be true is true, and that they are absolutely correct in their beliefs. If you can do that, the people will love you because they already believe a certain belief. They're not interested in hearing anything else. And if you can show them and put their mind at ease that you are proven that what they believe to be true is absolutely true, they love you. They'll throw money at you, buy you cars, and you get enough people doing that, you can buy yourself a $25 million jet and fly around with your boyfriends and smoke your dope in the Caribbean. But that's the way life is. People want to hear what they want to hear. And then there are unscrupulous people who are themselves blind guides. Like the Bible says, the blind leads the blind, and they are both fall into the pit. And so there are clergymen and TV preachers who we call blind guides. They don't give a damn about religion, theology, the history, paleontology, science. They don't give a damn about any of that. The bottom line is they make a lot of money. And they wear all the fancy clothes and wear their fancy watches and fly around in jets. Why? Because the people love them. The people love it. And since the people love it, the clergy and the priests and the preachers, they have a philosophy. And I know I've talked with so many of them. Their philosophy is the people are so ignorant, so ill-informed, and the people, generally speaking, don't really care what the truth is. They just want to hear something that makes them feel good so they can go to work and drink their beer and watch the ball game. It makes them feel good. And so they find out, the preacher finds out what do the people want to hear, and that's what he will tell them. And the longer, and when he's telling them the things they already believe and they want to hear, they love him. And then they will send him money so he doesn't have to work. You've got to work, so you go out and work and make a living and send him some money every week. And if you can get 5,000 people to send you some money every week, you can live pretty high. You don't have to go to work. You don't have to do much of anything. You just go out and do your thing and wear your mohair suit and dance around on the stage and talk about the Lord Jesus and the Holy Ghost and all that nonsense. And people just throw money at you. So I learned a long time ago, people will pay to hear what they want to hear. They won't support what they don't want to hear. And if there's one thing that we have learned in all of history, that generally speaking, not everybody, but generally speaking, the one thing we have learned about history is that people do not want to hear the truth. They want to believe what they want to believe, the way it should be, not the way it actually is. And therefore, military people, politicians, educational institutes, commerce, all kinds of institutions around the world realize that the people are generally speaking ignorant, ill-informed, unread, and are opinionated, and they have things they like and stuff they don't like, stuff they want to hear and stuff they don't want to hear. And so big corporations will sell you on something that they know you like, and they won't tell you what the dark stuff, the dark part of it that you don't want to hear. So that's what I've been trying to do for so many years, is just draw to the attention of people generally how much lies, deception, and spinning of stories to get your money, to get your allegiance, so that you will follow this particular church and you will follow this particular belief system, and never, ever, ever get around to asking yourself, one day asking yourself, where did this stuff really come from? Where did these ideas that I hold so dearly, where did they come from? It's just amazing to me that, like the Muslim community, the Islamic world, how many people in the Islamic world following Muhammad have ever asked themselves, what is the real, legitimate, provable, factual history of Islam? Where did it actually, in point of fact, come from? Who started it? And where did it actually come from? And then go out on a limb, something that no religious person does, Christian, Jew, or anybody else. Very few people have the guts to step out and say, I don't know about this stuff. I'm going to do some research on this and find out where all this nonsense has come from. Where did this religion of Islam really start? And where did this religion of what we call churchianity today, or Christianity, really come from? And especially, where does this stuff we call Judaism, where did it actually come from? Where did it start? And who were these people in the holy books? That's why Islam, Christianity, and Judaism are referred to as people of the book. Why? Because all three religions are based on a book. And so, the Old Testament, or the Torah, or the Talmud, and all the other books for the Jews, as well as the Bible and New Testament and all the holy books written by the different churches. So all three religions are the people of the book. They need a book to base their religion on. But it's frightening to anyone who has a modicum of brains to look at the world around them and realize how many people are believing and giving their life and giving their children's lives and giving their whole life to believing something which all you have to do is go to a reference book and an encyclopedia and read where your organization came from, who started it, and get all the background on the religion that you believe in, and then you find out you've been lied to. The whole thing was a lie from day one. And now the problem is that if you are a believer in your particular religion, and somebody comes along to enlighten you and is explaining to you how you have been lied to and tricked, people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the truth. You can't handle the truth. Why? Because if you accept the fact that that you didn't know, and you were foolish enough and ignorant enough and self-centered, egotistical enough that you wouldn't listen to anybody else, and you had the whole truth. And then one day when you find out that actually, in fact, you had no truth, there was no truth, now you are in trouble because you have promoted something which now you see you've lived your whole life for. You've been promoting it to your children and your grandchildren. You've been promoting it to your fellow man. You've been out there on the street and promoting a particular belief system that you know is the truth. And then you find out that it's not the truth. That means you have been stupid enough to fall for a lie. And therefore, like I said in times past, young children in school do not like being mocked and laughed at in class when they don't know something and they have to go to the blackboard and work out a problem, and they don't know it because they didn't study it, and all the other kids will laugh at you and mock you and laugh at you and call you names because you are stupid and you didn't, and they're laughing at you because you're so stupid. Children don't like that. They don't like to be, ostracized and laughed at and mocked by their fellow students. Nobody likes that, and adults don't like it either. So that's why today, when an adult hears something that he's been believing all his life and he finds out it's not true, or he's been told it's not true, and given the proof that it's not true, they don't want to hear it. So there are none so blind as those who choose not to hear. People don't want to know the truth. They're not interested to hear what the truth is. Why? It's because they believe their whole life a particular way, and they don't like the fact of you coming in and showing them that you are a fool. You bought into something a long time ago because you were ignorant, ill-informed, unread, uneducated, and you bought into something, and now you find out it's a cult or a lie or some kind of a political CIA operation, and you thought it was a wonderful church, and you find out, no, those CIA and secret societies and fraternal orders have been ripping you off and lying to you. And you have believed it all your life, and now you have to defend it. Either defend your faith or go on and admit it in front of everybody that you've been a fool and believe some bullshit. So that's why I have always been trying to awaken people, find out what it is you believe and where it came from. And believe me, boy, when you start digging into the history of religion, much less the history of commerce and banking and government, and God knows all the other institutions that we humans have baked up for our fellow man, and then find out that all these institutions that we've dreamt up to control our fellow man is all just a bunch of bull. It's all a bunch of lies, deception. The government isn't what you thought it was. Banks don't loan money. The cops are not there to protect you. None of this stuff is true. It's all been arranged for you before you were born. And your great-grandparents, they believed it. And your grandparents learned it, so they believed it. And then your parents came on, and they were taught, and they believed it. And then you have children, and you believe it. Now your children are buying into it. And this cycle of ignorance and stupidity never stops. It just keeps going on from generation to generation, and nothing gets better. Nothing gets better. It only gets worse. So the scripture has Jesus saying in the New Testament, by their fruits you shall know them. I know you've heard this before. Let me explain what happened. There's a passage in the Bible, in the New Testament story of Jesus, where some people come to Jesus. They show him in their hand, they show him a bunch of seeds. And they ask him, what kind of seeds are these? A brilliant question. What kind of seeds are these? And so it has Jesus saying, well, go plant the seeds. Go plant the seeds and water them and watch what comes up. In a few years, if there's an apple tree there, well, I guess that answers your question. It was apple seed. But if it's a pear tree that comes up after you planted it, well, I guess that answers your question. They were pear seeds. So by their fruits, you will know what kind of seed they are. So just plant the seed and watch what happens. And so the point being, the metaphor is that by their fruits, you will know what the seeds are. Well, when propaganda, when people are talking and telling you things, they are laying down seeds for your mind. And so like the scripture says, by their fruits you shall know them. So now what is the fruitage of the seeds of Islam? The teachings of Islam, the teachings of Muhammad, what has it produced? What has these seeds produced? Now that we've had Islam now for a long time, what are the fruitages? We've had Christianity for a long time. What is the fruitage? What has it done for the world? We've got Jews talk about that there's the ancient Israel. There was no ancient Israel, but the point being is that the Jewish religion has been planting seeds into the minds of men around the world. God's chosen people, God's chosen religion. But what is the fruitage of that concept? What is the fruitage of all three religions? Well, the fruitage, as you can easily see, is wars, violence, homosexuality, lunacy, murder, drug addiction, alcoholism, again, conflicts. It's all kinds of human imperfections, all kinds of humanity, raping and plundering humanity, the different religions killing each other, the Islam who loves the Lord, Allah, who loves the great God, Allah, but doesn't mind cutting your head off. If you don't love the Lord, they'll cut your head off. What the hell kind of a religion is that? And then, of course, you have the Jewish religion, which will tell you that they are God's chosen people and that everybody else is a bunch of cattle. What the hell kind of a religion is that? And then Christianity will tell you that they have the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but every Christian church teaches something different. Every cult, every so-called Christian cult, like Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, Church of God, Worldwide Church of God, Christadelphians, all of these York Rite cults who call themselves Christians, all of them have a different understanding, and everybody's got the truth, and everybody else is wrong. The bottom line, at the end of the day, now at the end of the age in which we're living, the fruitage now appears on the earth that at this particular time in the history of the human race, the world is now falling apart. It's dripping with blood, lies, alcoholism, drug addiction, wars, violence, lunacy, ignorance. The world itself has lost its humanity. It's lost its job. It's lost its home. It's lost its economy. Now, the only thing left for the world to lose now is its mind. So people are now just plain old losing their minds. And so, again, I'm just saying that if you don't understand where things have come from, if it's not important to you to understand government and law and religion and theology and understand the darkness that's in the men's minds, the darkness that controls the human race, the lies and deception and stupidity and ignorance, then you're just going to get more of the same. Whatever it is that you will accept, you will get more of. And so we have accepted all of the dark stuff that's going on with the drug addiction and murdering children and wars and violence and corruption and politics and religion and government and banks and God knows everything else. And the educational system is filled with lies, deception, and you get a degree so you can go out and crawl on your knees and make a, that's all you're going to college for, is to get a work permit. It's not because you're so smart, you're just getting a work permit. Now you can go get a job. And the best, and the one who have learned the best and know exactly what to kiss and when, because they got a degree, they get the better jobs. Why? What is the better jobs going to do for you? Well, it's going to give us more money for buying boats and planes and beer and living high. Now, but what is your education done for you? Well, I live and I drive a fancy new car and I eat steak where you eat chicken and I eat lobster where you eat hamburgers and I drive a big fancy car and have my own plane. Yeah, but when you die, what have you done for the world? What is life all about? Well, you begin to see what I'm talking about, that it's futile, that without knowledge and spirituality, the world is lost. Well, that's where we are today. The entire world of mankind is now totally in the dark, and religions are leading the way. Jews are killing Arabs, Arabs are killing Christians, Christians are killing each other, the systems under which we live are falling apart. It's really quite a story about mankind and who we are and what we've done to ourselves and what we have allowed others to do to us in the name of religion and government and banks and education and all the other nonsense. And we bought into it. The human race has bought into the lies and the deception. And young people going off to war, they think they look good in their uniform, and all the girls think the boys are so handsome in their uniform, and the boys love snapping to attention and saluting, never for a moment ever wondering what's this all about. How come all over the world and all the different languages and the nations of the world, how come all the nations of the world have the same symbols, the same words, the same terms, the same organizational structures all over the earth in every country of the world? You have the military, you have the Navy, you have an army, you have all the military establishments, and all over the world in every country you have the sergeants and the different the different officials. You have presidents and kings and rulers, and you have the banking. It's all the same in every country. Every country is loaded with the lies, the deception, and everybody has to be in compliance. I don't care if you're in France or Russia, Arabic countries, everybody has to be in compliance. You've got to look like everybody else in the world, everybody else in your country. You've got to believe what everybody else believes. You have to go along with it. Why? Because you will stand out and people will laugh at you. And nowadays they will even kill you. So if you live in an Arabic country and you're not Muslim, they may cut your head off. That's how much they love their Lord. So I'm just saying that religion and government, commerce, business, education, and law enforcement, all of this is all man-made one-upmanship. And the whole thing, when you look at the whole world of mankind, like I have been doing for some 65 years, when you look at the entire world of mankind and the history of nations and states and countries and the evolution of the human race and the evolution and of the countries of the world and where we've come from 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 years ago as opposed to what we do now. You know, we're still doing the same things today we've always done in the past. We're still just as equally as stupid, ignorant, ill-informed, unread, dim-witted as the human race has always been, which to my way of thinking is just incredible, because today with the advent of computers and the web, where you can go on and read tens of thousands of reference books on any subject you want, and go to libraries everywhere with books. There are lectures by the tens of thousands on all kinds of incredibly fascinating subjects that experts are speaking on, and yet today we are more ignorant than we've ever been before. So I'm just saying that theologically we are in trouble. Politically, we're far gone. We're too far gone politically. So I'm not looking for anything political or wonderful to happen. Thank God it might. If it does, it's wonderful. But I'm not going to be surprised if nothing happens. But I am looking at the spirituality of people and what their belief systems are. And, you know, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that when you're alive, you have the options. You have all the options when you're alive. You can decide what you want to believe or what you don't want to believe, or what church you want to belong to or what church you don't want to belong to, or even if you don't want to believe in anything. You have all those options in your head. You can decide what you want. But when you die, you don't have any options. When you die, whatever it is, that's what it is. And if it's different than what you thought it is, that's your problem. Because when you're alive, you're in this stage of the game. But when you die, you're in a different stage. And so if you live after you die, I don't know, I haven't been there yet. But if you live after you die, you're going to find out that nothing you thought was true was. And so that's why I've been fascinated all my life with strange things in the world that people don't know anything about. One of the most important and fascinating figures in religion that has just fascinated me for years, that is the story around this one person, is so big, so deep, so profound, that it just amazes me how many people don't know all of the stories around the man we call Moses. Moses was supposedly the great lawgiver. Christianity, Judaism, and Islam recognizes Moses. And Moses was the great teacher. But people have no idea in the world what the real story of Moses really was. And it hasn't got anything to do with Judaism, got nothing whatsoever to do with Islam or Christianity. First of all, if you do the research, which virtually nobody does because we don't have time for that, but if you do any really legitimate academic research, you go to a library, you go to a seminary library, and bring down about 14 of the reference books just on Moses and begin to read and study this man called Moses, you will first of all know and find out, if you just do the homework, you'll find out there was no Moses. Moses never lived. It's an idea. It's like Superman. It's a wonderful story, but he never really lived. And as I was a kid, I loved Mickey Mouse. It doesn't really exist. It's just a story when you're a little child. And so the story of Moses, the first thing you learn, if you really do the homework, is that Moses never lived. There was no such a man as Moses. And then you find out, well, that's why the Bible is called the greatest story ever told. Yeah, it's a story. And it's the greatest story ever told because it's the oldest story that's ever been told. And I used to catch hell when my mother would hear me telling a story. Are you out telling a story? Implying, are you lying again? You telling the stories? Well, that's what the Bible's called, the greatest story ever told. It's not the greatest collection of historical facts ever assembled. It's the greatest story ever told. And once you have taken a few years out of your life and start reading and studying theology, you begin to realize that Moses never lived, and yet there is an incredible one hell of a story behind this character called Moses. A lot of interesting stuff in relation to the worship around Moses. Moses was a first of all, Moses is not a Hebrew name. It goes back to an Egyptian name, an Egyptian word, Moses. But I'll give you, because there's so many places to start to talk about Moses. First of all, Moses came down from the mountain, we're told, with the 10 Commandments. If you go back to the Bible, the Old Testament, you will find that there was actually three, count them, 1, 2, 3, three different 10 Commandments. The first 10 Commandments, Moses comes down and sees the children of Israel worshiping a golden calf, and he becomes so angry, he takes the 10 Commandments that God has given him, and he throws them down on the ground, and they break. The plates break. Therefore, Moses now is the first lawbreaker. He broke the law. And so that's where we get the term, that you're a lawbreaker. You broke the law. That's what Moses did. He broke the law. And then, of course, he had to go back up, turn around and go back up again, and then God gave him a second set of the 10 Commandments, but those 10 Commandments are a little different than the first set. But that's okay. Nobody's going to know the difference because the first set was broken anyway. And then we'd find out that, no, actually, he gave him a third set of 10 Commandments. Well, how many people know that? And how important is it? Well, it's very important once you understand the symbolism and the codes and the encoded story in the New Testament and in the Old. First of all, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about when I say that it's a fascinating story of Moses, all the intricacies that you are not aware of. When we think of Moses coming down from the mountain, we think of I do anyway, Charlton Heston and the movie The Bible, and the 10 Commandments, I think it was called. And Moses comes down with two big slabs upon which is written the 10 Commandments. Well, first of all, there wasn't 10 Commandments. What we call the 10 Commandments is based, if you go to encyclopedia and read, go to reference books on Moses, you will see that the idea of 10 Commandments came from Egypt, not Jewish, not Hebrew, not Yahweh. It came from Egypt. but there wasn't 10 commandments. There were 12. And they weren't called commandments. They're almost identical, but it's called the 12 negative confessions. Write that down and remember it. Look on the web or go to a library and read about the 12 negative confessions. The 12 negative confessions in Egypt basically said, it's a negative confession. I will not do this to my fellow man. I will not steal from my fellow man. I will not bear false witness against my neighbor. These things I will not do. And so then they turn it around and say the 10 commandments is thou shalt not do this and that. That's exactly what the Egyptians said, but they said it a different way. They said, I won't do it. I will not steal, and I will not do this. I will not do that. And so it's called the 12 negative confession. And then a couple of the negative confessions was, I will not steal my brother's horse or his animal, and I will not steal his wife. And so to make it 10 commandments, and why is it 10? T-E-N, 10 commandments. There's a reason. And so you you join a couple of the 12 negative confessions, and now if you join 4 of them into 2, now you've got the 10 commandments. And so why is it called 10? Because 10, I-N, I and the I and the O, which is the basis for today what we call digital. Digital is the number 1 and 0, 10. And it has to do with the worship of the god of the sun. And in Egypt, the god of the sun was called the Aten. A-T-E-N, Aten. And so 10 is the 1 and the O, or the I and the O of digital. 10 is the number 10 Downing Street, is where the Prime Minister of England lives. His address is number 10 Downing Street. And of course you have the Jewish God Yahweh, which is the Aten. Another way of spelling it in the Aten was Aton, A-T-O-N, or A-T-E-N. Look in the dictionary, you'll see it's the same thing. The Aten was the sun. And another way of spelling the A-T-E-N, the sun god, the Aten, was Aton, A-T-O-N, the Aton or Aten, okay, is the sun god. So in Hebrew, what we call the Jewish religion, God's chosen people, you find out it's all taken from the ancient Egyptian. And so the name of God is 4 letters. We're told that in Hebrew, the 4 letters are called the tetragrammaton. Tetra meaning 4, gramma meaning word. So tetragrammaton. Tetra meaning 4, gramma meaning words, and Aton, the sun. The tetragramma Aton, tetragrammaton. So the Aton, or the tetragrammaton, is the name of the holy name of God. No, it's a bunch of bull. Go back and do some homework and you'll find the Aton is an old ancient name of the Aten. And Moses brings down the Aten commandments. All of this is dark secrets that the Jews have played on the people. And they've even fooled themselves into believing this stuff. And so when the Hindus, and that's a whole different story, going back to trace the ancient religions back to the Hindu. But the name of God, as I said in Hebrew, is Tetragrammaton. Tetragrammaton. And if you look in the reference books, you will see that in the old Hebrew writings that the old Hebrew rabbis, they talked about the tetragramma and the Aton being a sun god. And a couple of the old rabbis during the Middle Ages wrote and drew pictures of the Aton. Go back and look at it. It's on my website. If you go to Jordan Maxwell Show, not jordanmaxwell.com. No, jordanmaxwellshow.com. That's my website. And join the Research Society, and then all of the pictures and stuff I'm talking about is all there in full color. You'll see all of the stuff that you've been told that's just not true. But anyway, going back to the Aton or the Aten, Moses comes down, and we've got, like I said, we have a mental picture of Charlton Heston coming down with the 10 Commandments, these big plates, and he breaks the law. Well, the Hebrew word for those plates was not the 10 Commandments. It was the Hebrew term for those plates that Moses supposedly brought down. They were called stones because they're written on stone. They were called stones of the testimony. And so, Charlton Heston was bringing down these heavy stone tablets. We call them, the Christians call them the 10 Commandments. No, they were the stones of the testimony. And that's the Hebrew term for the 10 Commandments, stones of the testimony. Well, if you go back to the old Hebrew reference works and the Bible reference works, you will see that the stones of the testimony, so supposedly the great stone tablets that Moses came down from the mountain with, God gave him, the reference works say they were 2 small round stones that you could carry in one hand. Not slabs not big slabs of stone like Charlton Heston was carrying. No, the reference works, Bible encyclopedias and Bible dictionaries and reference works will tell you that they were called the stones of the testimony, which is very interesting. Moses now comes down with a new law called the stones of the testimony. Why are they called stones of the testimony in Hebrew? Because it has to do with your testicles. That's where we get the word test. That men that get angry, we say they're getting testy. They're starting to show their manhood when they get testy. And so you're going to testify in a court. And you're a kid, you're going to write out and take a test in school. Or if you're a Christian, you're going to give your testimonial. Test comes from testicle. So the stones of the testimony were the stones of the testimony are your testicles. This is why when the Jews go into court, they might still do it today, but they did it in the old times. When one Jew brings another Jew into court before the Jewish court, both of them, when talking before the judge, both men had to hold their testicles as they testified with their testimony. And so they had to hold their testicles when they testified. Why? Because it's a symbol. If we catch you lying in this court against your Jewish brother, and we catch you doing something, one Jew against another Jew, you better understand what you're doing here. You're holding your testicles or the stones of your testimony. And so Moses comes down with the stones of the testimony. It's just a symbolic story that has sexual connotations. There were no just big plates of stone. No, they were 2 small round stones, is what the encyclopedias and the reference works will tell you. So go back and look at this whole story of Moses all over again. There's a bigger story here yet. Now that's just one of about 10 fascinating things about Moses and the 10 Commandments you didn't know. The second thing I think is very interesting is that Moses represents a moon god. Moses represents a lunar religion. There was no such a man as Moses. But the name Moses and the word Moses is connected in the ancient Arabic world, the ancient Egyptian world, to a worship of the moon. So Moses was a lunar name, a lunar religion. And so the ancient peoples of the Middle East, if you stand in Egypt and look eastward, there's a huge mountain range in the middle of the Sinai Desert, very high mountains in the Sinai. And so from Egypt and the Sinai, that part of Egypt, next to Egypt, looking eastward, every night about 6 o'clock when the sun goes down and you're facing east, seeing a large mountain range, from behind the mountains every night would come up the moon. And so the moon became known as the god of the ancient Arabic peoples. And so that's why today Jewish holidays and Jewish holy days in the Sabbath, all the holy days are always after sundown. Always after sundown. After 6 o'clock are the holy days. As a matter of fact, that's when days are counted. Monday through Sunday, days are counted from 6 o'clock in the evening to 6 o'clock in the next evening. Why? Because Judaism was following the moon god Moses. And Moses was teaching the Hebrew people the lunar religion. And so that's why Jews celebrate their holy days after sundown, because that's when the moon comes out, after 6 o'clock. So it's showing you it's a lunar, moon-worshipping religion. And the Jews today will tell you that their calendar is referred to as a lunar calendar. And so the lunar calendar with the lunar divinity named Moses, who's holding his testicles and testifying, all of this goes back to sex worship, moon worship. It's an extraordinary, deep and dark, hidden subject that I'm telling you, it's about time you wake up and find out where this stuff has really come from. And then when you find out that Moses not only led the people in the moon worship of Allah or Yahweh, Yahweh or Allah is the same God. Yahweh is Hebrew, Phoenician Hebrew, or Allah is Arabic, Egyptian Arabic. So it's Arabic or Hebrew. In Arabic, the moon god was Allah. In Hebrew, it's Yahweh. Yahweh, Allah is the same thing. It's all moon worship. And so that's why, you'll see the connection between Islam, Judaism, Christianity. All of this stuff needs to be looked at again. And that's what I'm going to be doing in the weeks to come, explaining where all of this dark stuff really comes from. This is Jordan Maxwell. Go to my website, Jordan Maxwell Show. That's my only website, is jordanmaxwellshow.com, and join my research society. You'll see a research society website. Go on, read about it, and join it. And we'll talk with you next week. This is Jordan Maxwell, and thank you for listening.
No rules, no rules, no taboo topics, no taboo topics, no fear of doom, no fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio, American Freedom Radio.